Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about Heavy Pendulum, the seventh studio album from American metalcore, post-hardcore veterans and underdogs, Cave In. With the exception of a writing credit on the album's opening cut, New Reality, this is the band's first studio album without Caleb Schofield, who unfortunately passed away in 2018. And realistically, it's also pretty much their first major album in over a decade, 11 years to be exact. I mean, yeah, they did drop Final Transmission back in 2019, not too long after Caleb passed away, but it wasn't really a complete record. Like, those songs were never intended to be released in that format. Those were all demos that the band decided to put out because it was the last music they recorded with Caleb, and therefore it was that important to them, and they needed to put it out to bring some catharsis, out there into the world and such. For all these reasons, there's been a pretty solid level of hype leading up to Heavy Pendulum. I've actually gotten quite a few DMs from some of y'all asking if I got the promo copy, asking if I was going to review the album, asking what I thought of a lot of the singles leading up to its release. So, at least as far as the Metal Meltdown audience is concerned, y'all are clearly a little pumped. And clearly this is something Cave In must be aware of as well. Clearly they understand that it's been a while and they've got to make up for lost time, because this is easily their biggest and maybe even one of their weirdest records to date. Which is saying a lot, because Cave In never played your typical American metalcore in the vein of Killswitch Engage or As I Lay Dying. They always had kind of a weirder sound, initially rooted in 90s hardcore punk, which then expanded to include post-hardcore and alternative rock and alternative metal. But yeah, even with all that in mind, Heavy Pendulum may still be their weirdest and their biggest album to date. There's influence from post-metal, from sludge metal, from psychedelic rock, from space rock, progressive metal. The usual metalcore and post-hardcore flavors remain, but now emboldened by a lot of the ideas and concepts that some of Cave In's contemporaries have been playing around with in recent years. There's a lot of stuff on this record that would not have been out of place on some of the last few Converge records, albeit with a potent kind of hard rock, hardcore underbite. I'm even to a certain extent reminded of certain elements from certain Cave In affiliated side projects like Mutoid Man and Old Man Gloom, both of which Stephen Brodsky are currently a part of, the latter of which Caleb Schofield was a part of throughout the 2010s. Worth noting as well, Heavy Pendulum is absolutely inspired by the horrific and dystopian events of the past couple of years, as Stephen Brodsky would go on to clarify. If you laid out the timeline for 2020 like a recipe, it might look something like this: global pandemic plus lockdowns plus worldwide protests over the wrongful death of George Floyd plus election year equals cocktail for end times. Somewhere in that concoction we found ingredients for a new Cave In album. Even going as far as to reference the song Blood Spiller, saying, "Blood Spiller is the sound of us swallowing it, getting ripped on the horrors within, and coming down to reflect on it through song." So yeah, like I said, it's big, it's weird. There's a lot of sonic meat to chew and swallow here, and part of the problem I have with this record immediately is that it is a bit too much. I mean, it's not overwhelming in terms of its tone or concept. It's not so out there, so experimental that I'm flabbergasted and horrified by it. I literally mean that it's too much. Heavy Pendulum is 70 minutes long, and it fucking does not need to be. Lucky for Cave In, though, the steak they've served up is so well seasoned and so well cooked that I don't mind having to cut off a little bit of fat or even chewing on it if necessary. While Heavy Pendulum is longer than it needs to be at the same time, the bulk of it is so strong and so consistent and so invigorating that I can't picture this being a huge deal unless you're a colossally picky asshole like myself. The aforementioned Blood Spiller, for instance, is a moody, chunky, sludge metal bruiser with ominous passages and some addictive vocal crooning. It almost starts off feeling like a really evil, slowed down Mutoid Man song, but some heavier kind of metalcore meets sludge metal rhythms and beat downs and some gnarly vocals and some spirited solos keep this from feeling derivative of anything we've heard from Mutoid Man. Not that it would bother me if it was derivative of Mutoid Man, because I fucking love that band. Similarly, the album's opening track, New Reality, is an absolutely bonkers, buff and bulky riff fest of epic proportions, tons of gnarly grooves and sludgy chugs here. There are some spacey, atmospheric bits and pieces here and there that keep things a little weird, a little hazy, a little fuzzy, and I love how the chorus just completely soars over all of it, like an eagle soaring over a swamp. A fucking disgusting, putrid swamp. Cave In take things a step further on Searchers of Hell, which is a very dynamic and slightly unpredictable kind of progressive sludge stoner metal banger. I'm honestly here reminded of like a full-on blend of Remission and Leviathan era Mastodon, especially with that absolutely manic percussion and those huge, dense, crushing, sludgy riffs. You've also got tracks like Blinded by Ablaze and the album's title track, Heavy Pendulum, which at times channel the melancholy, the dreary and dreamy vibes of a band like Alice in Chains. They're very gloomy and definitely a little odd, but I kinda love them. To be honest, I think that these might be my favorite cuts on the record. Followed closely perhaps by Nightmare Eyes, which takes a lot of these ideas and concepts and applies it to a more traditional and dramatic kind of American blues rock metal format. It makes for something that is just dripping with soul and heart. While I do like a majority of what I'm hearing on the track Wavering Angel, I don't see any need for this track to be 12 minutes long. I think you could have easily condensed this into like a 7.5 minute kind of prog metal, sludgy post-metal opus. If it were up to me, I would also remove Days of Nothing and Pendulambient from the record. They're really straightforward and unnecessary pieces of like ambient filler that do not need to exist. They exist only to provide additional atmosphere and tension, and I don't really think it's necessary. Ultimately, though, if the worst thing I can say about Heavy Pendulum is that there are too many good songs, then, you know, clearly Heavy Pendulum is a really good fucking album. I'm feeling a very strong 3.5 out of 5, despite the fat, despite the gristle. This is a very entertaining record with a lot of really strong songs. Everyone sounds fucking great on this record. Nate Newton of Converge fame killing it in place of Caleb Schofield. I love the production of this record. I like how hefty and chunky everything is. I love how balanced everything is. Alright, I'm hungry as fuck all of a sudden, so let's wrap this up. Robert's gotta eat! 3.5 out of 5, a very enthusiastic one at that. It could be tighter, it could be more consistent, in my opinion, but hey, it's still a really good fucking record. It's their biggest, it's their weirdest. Welcome back, Cave In. Please don't wait another 11 years to release a proper studio album. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.